you're in the right spot.
All right, goodbye.
Okay. Good morning. Today is Friday, April 21st, 2023. It's 8:30 a.m. and we are reviewing the final draft of H126 and activating community resilience and biodiversity. We're closing in on the end, and I hope we are voting this morning, thinking that we are getting very close to that. But we're not assuming anything. So I asked council to come in with a highlighted version that we'll just do a sort of a quick walkthrough so that we know what changed since the last time we looked. Then we'll walk through with the secretary, who hasn't been with us for a little while. So we're reconnecting to all the stakeholders. So Mr. Kowski, good morning. Thank you very much. If you can take us on a relatively high-speed guided tour of this draft, which should be quite familiar to all of us by now.
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm here on draft 1.1 of the strike-all amendment to H126. The changes are highlighted in yellow. So the first change is on page 2 in the findings section. It adds the word water. So the causes of the drivers of changes of nature in nature rank as follows: changes in land, water, and sea use. Next, on page 3, there are 2 new findings being added. First, number 8 on line 11. Freshwater vertebrate populations have declined by 84% globally since 1970, twice the rate of decline of biodiversity in terrestrial and marine biomes. Almost 1 in 3 freshwater species are threatened with extinction. And approximately 75% of all river miles assessed in Vermont are disconnected from their floodplains, indicating degradation and exacerbating flood-related damages. So I will just point out that there are already a significant number of findings in this bill. There is all of the findings are supposed to be factual statements with citations. I'm unaware of the citations of either of these findings, but committee can do as it wishes.
Continue, thank you.
The next change is on page 5 in the definition of ecological reserve area. It's striking the words of natural land cover. So ecological reserve area means an area having permanent protection from conversion, and that is managed to maintain a natural state. The same change is made in the other 2 definitions as well.
Thank you.
On page 6, in the definition of natural resource management area, there is new language. So natural resource management area means an area having permanent protection from conversion for the majority of the area, but that is subject to long-term sustainable land management. There is a new definition for the word conversion, which means a fundamental change to natural ecosystem type or habitat, natural or undeveloped land, cover type, or natural form and function of aquatic systems. And then there's another change in the definition of sustainable land. Well, it was sustainable forestry, I believe, and this is being changed to sustainable land management. Yes, it was sustainable forest management. So sustainable land management means the stewardship and use of forests and forest lands, grasslands, wetlands, riparian areas, and other areas, including the types of agricultural areas that support biodiversity, in a way and at a rate that maintains or restores their biodiversity, productivity, regeneration, capacity, vitality, and their potential to fulfill now and in the future relevant ecological, economic, and social functions at local, state, and regional levels, and that does not degrade ecosystem function.
What all that means.
That's all I'm saying.
So this definition is used as part of the definition of natural resource management area, and so that will be used in the initial land inventory and as part of the plan. So the people making those documents will be deciding.
I'm not surprised.
Okay. And just, none of this is new language, but I did want to see a single document that we collected, our last draft. Right, onward and upward.
The next change is on page 7 to the definition of the word conserved. So conserved means permanently protected and meeting the definition of ecological reserve area, biodiversity area, or natural resource management area as defined in this section. For purposes of meeting the 30% goal in this title, for purposes of meeting the 50% goal, conserved primarily means permanently protected and meeting the definition of ecological reserve area, biodiversity, conservation area, and natural resource management area as defined in this section. Although other long-term land protection mechanisms and measures that achieve the goals of Vermont conservation design that are enforceable and accountable and that support an ecologically functional and connected landscape may be considered. So I just want to flag, this is new language to me. I was not here. So it is odd to me to define a term, but then leave it vague about what it's going to mean in 2050. So it means primarily means one thing, but then it can be other things can be considered as part of it. So practically, I don't understand how that works.
Okay. Well, I think the conversation we had was that centered around the notion that the toolkit of conservation measures was broader than whatever traditional permanent conservation, for instance, through easement. It might include, we talked about a conservation ladder and ways that people get involved in conservation that may lead to permanent conservation, what isn't necessarily traditional permanent conservation, and that we wanted a full toolkit available for the period 2030 through 2030. Thank you.
Never used my toolkit.
Maybe you never used all the tools in the toolkit. Usually there's somebody
Never
carry you
used the
around.
one.
I knew how to farm half as well as I know how to farm that. Okay.
I know farm half as well as I
You
know.
know how to, thank you. We haven't had that this session. Okay, thank you.
So the next change is on page 7. It's adding to the vision of the state of Vermont to support watershed health. On page 8, there's a change. So the conserved land inventory, this is switching what's currently there. So it now reads on or before July 1, 2024, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board in consultation with the Secretary shall create an inventory. And previously it was the other way around.
Thank you. Right, I think that's going to come up too close there.
The next change is on page 9. So these are the elements of the inventory. So there's new language added to the first one, which is a review of the conservation categories. So as part of this review, criteria shall be developed to determine the types of agricultural lands that will qualify as supporting and restoring biodiversity and therefore count towards the natural resource management area category.
Thank you.
On page 10, there is another change. This is still in the inventory. So number 6 now reads a review of how aquatic systems are currently conserved or otherwise protected in the state, including a description of the benefits land conservation provides for aquatic systems, whether this is sufficient to manage aquatic system functions and services, and how the implementation methods for achieving the goals of this chapter using Vermont Conservation Design as a guide would include specific strategies for protecting aquatic system health.
Like that.
Wow, we got there. Thank you.
There's a change in number 7. So how existing programs will be used to meet the conservation goals of this chapter and recommendations for new programs, if any, that will be needed to meet the goals. The next change is on page 11. It again switches VHCB with the secretary. It also adds reference to meet the vision and the goals established for the plan. Additionally, that is added further down on line 10. So the plan shall include a comprehensive strategy for achieving the vision and goals. On page 12, again, in developing the plan, it will be it says VHCB in consultation with the secretary. It then adds to the list of stakeholders watershed groups. And then farther down in the update, so the update shall include progress towards meeting the vision and the goals. And then finally on page 13, there's a new appropriation. So the existing appropriation is $75,000. This is also appropriating $150,000 to A&R for a limited service position to support the development of the statewide conservation plan.
Thank you very much. And on that last point, that's one of the other reasons we have to ask the secretary to come back to talk to us, because we didn't have this appropriation. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. With that, let's go and invite Secretary Moore to join the table. Good morning and thanks for coming in.
Of course.
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed at 8:30 on Friday, which is a challenge. Thank you.
So I put together just one slide to guide our conversation this morning. For the record, Julie Moore, Secretary of Natural Resources. And just wanted to start by acknowledging the collaboration and partnership with the Forest Partnership and VHCB and the draft Ledge Council just walked all of you through. In particular, the proposed definitions in that version for conversion, expanding it to sustainable land management and conserved, really go a long way towards addressing agency concerns. And so I'm grateful for that collaboration. I would like to put on the table in front of you one additional clarification. I think it is already implicit in the intent of the bill, but suspect it may give others comfort to have it laid out explicitly, which would be to modify 2804B3, which is on page 11, I believe, of the draft you have in front of you. And just make clear that when we're talking about access, it includes compatible recreational access, as opposed to land access in the context of how VHCB has a work group currently. As I say, I see this as a clarifying set of edits as opposed to anything that functionally changes the underlying bill. And then lastly, wanted to speak a little bit to the appropriation. Agency capacity really is strained at the moment, as I've talked to this committee about before. Senator Bray, when I had been in here a week or two ago to talk about 126, you asked specifically about what was needed for FY24, and that's the amount that's reflected in the bill Ledge Council just walked you through. It would be a $150,000 appropriation that would support one limited service position. I anticipate a similar level of support would be needed in 25 and 26, but obviously those are years. And we'll also continue to pursue other potential funding avenues between now and then to gain the agency the capacity it needs to support this work.
Okay, thank you. And just so that at some point, the bill report, someone might say, and can you just say a little bit more about what the limited term position individual would be doing?
Sure. So I see in particular that agency data sets would be pretty foundational to both the inventory as well as ultimately the planning effort. And so serving as the sort of hands that will compile that information, that may need to do different analyses to interpret the data we currently have available on our own conserve plans, and then help consolidate that information for use. I see this as foundational work to the overall process. And then in terms of the planning effort, that's sort of what I envision would happen in FY '24. In the out years, it's looking at bringing in information from our long-range management plans and trying to ensure that consistency between this conservation planning work and conservation planning we are already engaged in as an agency.
Great, thank you. Very helpful. Any committee questions for the secretary?
Thank you.
There's a nail scissors right now. We have a little distracted there.
On my to-do list as well. I realize he's getting my to-do list. So
They're not
I
even safety scissors.
appreciate this, the clarification. And I'm not gonna disagree, but I think you probably know how I feel about recreating on public drinking waters. I just wanted to say that out loud. That is something that, like, when we talk about compatible recreational access, that is an interesting, like, how do we define that? What does that mean? And so I think there's more to be explored there.
I agree, and I think the words selected there are intentional, and really meant to recognize not every recreational use is always compatible with other goals, conservation goals for a particular parcel. I think, using the example of Berlin Pond, that's the reason that gas motors and gas ice augers are not allowed.
Which we're very grateful for.
Right, but it's very much in that
Yeah,
spirit of, it's an important conversation, and I think trying to make clear it's not an all or nothing proposition.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. I don't even live near here and I know all about Berlin.
I bet you do.
Okay,
Had some conversations about it.
yeah, all right. Well, great. Any other questions, comments, et cetera, from the secretary? Right. So, thank you, Madam Secretary.
You are welcome.
With that, I think I want to thank the committee and the committee and the many partners that have worked on this, not just in the last few weeks, but actually for a year or more, actually, to get us to where we are. It's more than that. It's a couple of years that brings us to where we are today. So just want to acknowledge everyone's contribution. And with that, Chair would welcome a motion to report this paper. It's our committee bill, so.
I am
Sorry, it's not a
so
committee bill.
ready to do
It's a little
this.
early here. We need to slow down. It's
Yeah,
Take it a little
amendments.
slow.
Yeah.
Just no reason. There's nothing we're waiting on.
To reports favorably, H126. First, we have to adopt the amendment. 2 steps. Yeah, council.
I think you're going to ask me. to
Oh,
report the
yes,
change.
thank you.
Secretary just
Yeah. So we,
asked for.
yeah, thank you so much.
It's very
We talked about this last night, but it has eluded me overnight. So thanks for that. So the first motion we look for is to amend as offered by the secretary in section 2804B3 as provided on the slide that she's brought.
I'm happy to move that motion.
Any committee discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So we're adopting that clarification in 2804B3. Although it was 500, as I heard it, then Mr. County, what will the draft number be once that change is made?
2.1.
2.1? Okay, thank you. So then be looking for a motion to report favorably H126 as amended in draft 2.
Do you want me to, okay, I would move, that's a great sounding motion. I would move that.
Like so moved? Okay, got it. Any committee discussion? Right, all those in favor, please.
Oh, I'm gonna take a roll call, I assume.
Yeah, yes, we'll take a roll call. So, any other committee discussion? Hearing none. The clerk will call the roll, please.
McDonald,
Yes.
McCormick,
Yes.
Watson.
Yes.
Hold on, I gotta write your names while I'm doing this. Okay. White, yes. Chair Bray.
Yes. Okay.
5-0.
Ms. Chakowski, do you know when we will get a clean draft back so that I'll just know? Thank you so much.
Thank you
You're
so
a
much,
star.
everyone. I know you got nothing else going on.
So that's 5-0. I'll report the bill. Thank you, everybody.
Friday.
I had a cappuccino.
We have to leave now.
That's really helpful. Who's reporting this? Thank you.
Say thank you.
Thank you. So this is for you then, sir.
Yes, it was, it lives in the room.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you.
I'm not allowed to own any of these.
I think that that's fair.
Just have to walk this in. Thank you, I'm sorry, I was.
What are you talking about? You got nothing else going on over there, so.
Thank you, everyone. That was, honestly, there was a lot of Sturm und Drang behind the scenes to get everyone to get to a document. It's like the Hatfields and the McCoys called a time out, you know, said, okay, we could agree we all want to live in this valley.
Next to the rivers and the streams.
Next to the rivers and the streams and the fishies and
The microbiomes.
Yeah. Macro and micro vertebrates.
Wait, look, hold on.
Okay,
Check. Now we just have 5 more.
okay, so then.
That's good. We're about to get another one.
Right. And now I'm realizing we're still, on the air, so let me let people know what's up next. We're gonna go to the bottle bill and just, I think, we're running a little ahead. Mike O'Grady's gonna be in. We asked him to put together a little bit of language on a couple of things yesterday, so we'll go through that. And then I think probably what will be, he also put together a timeline and sent it to us. Jude, if we could,
I didn't see the timeline. Saw your copy, but I think it-
it actually got forwarded to me by somebody else. Not.
So let me see.
I'm gonna go grab my laptop. Do we have like 2 minutes?
Yeah, Michael's supposed to be here at 9. It might
I'm gonna go to
be,
the bathroom.
yeah, sure.
It'll come up, go up.
So, Jude, why don't we take it, put us on,
Oh,
we
sure.
will
Sorry.
adjourn briefly till we have.